This is a pen, and this is a page. Well, okay, lots of pages. When you ask the average person what is the purpose of these two things, they're most likely going to tell you something along the lines of communication. But when you ask the wisest among us, both now and throughout history, those who have done the most amazing things and changed the world in many ways, what I think they would say is, these two things are a tool for thinking. Many of history's most famous minds have credited the pen and paper for their success and who they've become as people. And after studying them and trying this out for myself, I've come to the conclusion that, yeah, they are totally right. It's really hard to understate just how valuable journaling is to any undertaking involving either the mind or the heart, which is literally everything in life. You may have heard the saying, the dullest pencil is better than the sharpest memory. I'd like to venture that one step further and say, the dullest pencil is better than the sharpest mind. If you've ever upgraded a computer, you know that you can add more memory or more processors to make a computer run faster. In the same way, journaling offers us the special ability to augment our brains themselves. Think about that for a second. That is really, really cool. To sort through this mess of thoughts that all of us are carrying around in here all the time, 24/7, to find the signal in all that noise. If you're anything like me, this might not seem like the most fun or engaging topic in the world. You might be thinking like, wow, okay, Kevin, this is journaling. I've tried this before in kindergarten and that was kind of a waste of time. And I hear you, but I challenge you to hear me out on this one. It's most likely because you haven't found the right way to use it in a way that's compatible with your brain. But I'm jumping the gun. Here are a couple of the ways that you can experiment with, and we'll go through them together. Starting with the free write. So this is my absolute all-time favorite way to journal, and I make a point to do this every single day. The idea of free writing is to take everything that's up here and just dump it out of your head onto the page. Don't edit yourself, don't stop, just stream of consciousness, take everything from up here and just get it out. This helps you to free up not just a lot of mental space, but also to help you increase clarity as you figure out what the heck is even up here in the first place. And now you don't need a writing prompt, but the way that I usually start is I just sit down and write in my journal, good morning, smiley face. Gotta have the smiley face. Today I am blank, and then I start writing. Sometimes I start writing about how I'm feeling, or today I'm, what I'm doing, just whatever comes to mind. And what you're doing is you're kind of like pulling a thread out of one of your shirts that's super old. You start pulling on this thread and slowly the entire shirt unravels. That's kind of what you're doing with your mind. You're just starting anywhere to find a little thread that you can start pulling on. And just watch and see where that leads. I think a huge major value of this, of free writing, is to give yourself this safe place to be able to say the stuff that you would normally filter if you're talking to other people. There's a lot of times we censor ourselves, we repress ourselves, and so the real part of us inside is not being heard. Even if it's not a desirable emotion or thought to have, repressing that is not usually the best way to deal with it. Language is just one of the many ways we as humans process information. Especially if you're a visually oriented person like me. It's so helpful to process our thoughts and ideas by drawing them out. By adding visuals, we're engaging more of our brains than with language alone. Research shows that the more senses we can use when we process something, the better able we are to remember it and understand it. And as a quick side note here, visuals isn't limited to just drawing pictures. I actually find myself drawing a ton of graphs in my own journals. I find them super useful as I'm trying to understand how different concepts and ideas interact with each other, especially over the course of time. And building on the last point, another way to go beyond the bounds of just language is to doodle. Don't be afraid to draw aimlessly in your journal. Sometimes for the best insights, you need to let your brain change gears for a while. This is why a lot of the best realizations come to us while we're in the shower or doing the dishes. Charles Darwin is actually famous for taking these long walks throughout the day and having these major insights that change the course of his fields as we know it from just walking around. So giving your brain something mindless to do can create the space it needs to bubble up these deeper insights up to the surface. All right, moving on. Here's another interesting one, and it's having a dialogue. In this case, having a dialogue with yourself. As a peer counselor and RA back in my old days, we were trained to offer more questions than answers. We were taught to realize that people have the answers within themselves already, and our job is just to help them locate it. Try this exercise. If you're in a tough situation in life, or you have some difficult decisions to make, go ahead and journal about it with the free write exercise I mentioned before, and then turn around and ask yourself for some advice. But once you put on your mentor hat, stop to pose some questions for yourself instead of just jumping to offering answers. Questions like, why is this bothering you? Or why do you feel most drawn towards this option? Where do you think your hesitation is coming from? What is the rationale for the opposite viewpoint? And are there any biases that are pulling you in different directions? When in doubt, a good question to always ask is why? Clarify and go deeper. We actually engage with information differently when we're in speaker mode versus listener mode. In speaker mode, we often are talking from within our current context. We are smack in the middle of the action, and we feel things and we see things very, very intensely. But when you transition into listener mode, that allows us to zoom out a little bit and see things from an external perspective. And oftentimes we see things that we otherwise would have missed. So the power of having a dialogue where we shift back and forth from speaker mode to listener mode as we talk to ourselves, it gives us an opportunity to do both the speaking and the listening. And if you like this strategy, you can actually take this one step further as well. Sometimes you really want the advice of someone in particular, someone who maybe isn't there in the moment because they're somewhere else. Maybe they're deceased from history, or they just never existed at all. Maybe they're from a TV show or something. But regardless, it's someone you look up to and really value how they see the world. So I know this might sound a little bit strange, but hold that person in your mind and imagine yourself having a conversation with that person. And as you're journaling, have a dialogue between them and yourself. And when you're in that person's mode, just imagine what they would say. And once again, the power of this approach is perspective taking. Each person has their own perspective, their own way of prioritizing their values. And so the reason we look up to certain people and characters is because they embody a value that we want for ourselves, that we feel drawn to. Hence, in asking that person for advice, you're really asking yourself this question. If I were to prioritize this set of values that this person represents, how might I show up in the world differently? How would I see the world differently? How would I act differently? And again, I know it's kind of weird, but I've actually gotten some pretty good results with this technique in my life. And so if you've never tried it, especially if you're at a position where you have some difficult decisions to make, or you feel like you're very unsure about how to move forward, you might be surprised. This might be a fun one for you to try out. So that is just a few of the many, many ways to harness the power of journaling. Because when wielded just right, this isn't just a pen. This isn't just a page. They're extensions of you. They're ways to augment this thing up here. Hey friends, as you're probably very well aware, the world is in a lot of pain right now from racism and everything happening in the world. I think in these situations, it's very, very important for us to find ways to empathize and take action so we can all move forward together to heal as a human family. I believe that listening to and hearing each other's stories is one of the most important first steps to finding that empathy. And so I wanted to personally take a couple actions here and maybe encourage some of you all as well. Number one, for my Black brothers and sisters out there, if you have a story that needs to be told, but don't have the technical know-how for how to get started, I have a camera course that I put a lot of time and energy into making. I normally sell it, but I want to make it available to you for free if that's what you need to get started and have your voice heard. I will also be setting aside some time to get back to as many questions as I can on Instagram related to how to set up a YouTube studio, how to set up audio, visuals, all this stuff to get your stories heard, so that we can begin to heal as a human family. So message me on Instagram for the course, for those questions, and I will try to get to as many of you as I can. Thirdly, for all of you interested who also do want to support, my course will still be for sale here, and I will be donating all of the proceeds this month to nonprofit organizations working to combat racism and heal the world in that way. And so in this heavy time, to all of you, but especially my brothers and sisters in the Black community, we love you, we see you, and we stand with you. And to all of us, let's make sure that we can show up in the world in that way. It's going to take every one of us to move forward and build the world that we want to live in. Much love, my friends.